Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are author Patricia Nell Warren and ceramist potter Gareth Mason. Author, poet, political activist, Patricia Nell Warren was born and raised in Montana. She started writing at a very young age while living at the Deer Lodge, which today is a National Historic Site. She married a Ukrainian poet, Yuri Tarnovsky, and learned his language, then wrote poetry in Ukrainian, right?
Yes.
And published her Ukrainian work. Patricia was a book editor then for 22 years at the Reader's Digest, and she published her first novel for Dial Press in 1974, but she divorced then, separated from the New York group, and her name, Patricia Kalina, and became Miss Warren.
Went back to my maiden name.
Went
yeah.
back to your maiden name.
Right.
And that's when you published The Front Runner.
Yes. After that was my second novel.
So tell us a little bit about that, because it is the most celebrated book on gay love that's been written, I have to say.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You know, when you're in the middle of writing a book, you have no idea where it's going to go. And especially since I was in the middle of coming out at the same time, it was a
Oh, you were?
tumultuous.
Oh.
Well, I was in the closet, like a lot of people in my generation. I knew at a pretty early age that I was different from other people, but I never heard the terms sexual orientation or lesbians or gay. I mean, that all came later.
But so were you running? Were you running from the closet? Were you what?
I was running in the closet. Running to stay in it.
Running to get out, running, because it's interesting when you talk about it in that respect, and we look at The Front Runner. And did you actually run?
Oh, yes.
So you were a runner,
yes.
So you had that as well. Okay.
That's right, that's right. See, I was, in grade school. I was born in 1936. So we're talking the 1940s into the 1950s. I mean, who heard of gay, you know? I had no idea. I was in high school from 49 until 53, and had my first, heart throb for a girl. That
you
was
did?
That was in school at the same time that I was. I had no idea I was being a lesbian, no.
And now the next question is, why were you writing in Ukrainian when you got married? Because you didn't have any kind of feelings for your husband?
Well, I did a really good job of trying. I really tried.
Because something else was taking place in your marriage, learning a language.
Yeah, that's right. There was a lot of, these were many people from Eastern Europe who evacuated out of that part of the world during the Second World War. They did not want to live under communism,
Right.
so they came to the United States, and there was a very large Ukrainian immigrant community in the Northeast and also in Canada. And I met this guy through a classmate of mine in college in upstate New York, and I've always been interested in Europe and languages, and I've spent some time there.
That's why.
So there was a background there to be interested. It didn't seem all that foreign to me.
And you also wrote in not in Spanish, but you wrote when you traveled to Spain about Franco.
I lived in Spain for a while,
Uh-huh.
and I learned the language well enough. I probably could have written in it, but I certainly was comfortable vernacularly and lived there for a number of years and did some work there for the Reader's Digest.
Oh, you
with
did?
with the Spanish edition. Loved the country, and I have traveled in other European countries as well, so it all felt very natural to me for a while to do this.
Did you go back? Did you ever go to Ukraine?
We were invited,
Ukraine?
the New York group, when the thaw, you remember the period of the thaw when under Khrushchev they were
Yes.
finally beginning to loosen up a little bit and to allow writers and artists
Right,
to
they went-
visit back and forth. And there was the moment when the first Soviet Ukrainian dissident poets were allowed to come over here. And there was an invitation that was extended to the New York group, and especially to me, because I was an American, I was a little safer. I wasn't one of the actual ethnic emigres, but I'd written in their language.
Right,
And,
yeah.
but it was not an official invitation from the Soviet Ukrainian government, so I didn't feel comfortable going, so I very regretfully said no.
You've never gone. You
I've
haven't
never,
been
never
there.
gone, but I've been in touch now recently, now that Ukraine is independent. There are certainly people there that I hear from on the internet.
Do you still speak the language? Or write in the language?
A little. I know I don't write it anymore, and I haven't spoken it in a long time. I'm a little rusty, but I do have Ukrainian friends, and I get the practice once in a while. And
You worked for the Reader's Digest.
Yes.
You were editing. You were an editor.
yes,
And so you were editing other people's work, obviously. How did that feel for a novelist? I don't know how it feels if you're a writer and you're writing, editing someone else's work.
you know, it was a great experience. It was at the time the company was really at the peak of their power and influence, and I was working in the book end of the thing. Both I worked on books for the magazine for a while, which was nonfiction.
Was it in Boston? Were you in Boston?
No, upstate New York was
Oh,
where
you
the
were in
corporate
New York.
offices
I
were,
see.
but we also had a New York office. And then I was with the Condensed Book Club for a while, and that was fiction. And I really learned a lot working with other people's work. We were very respectful to writers.
I can see that.
Their style.
I can see that part of it because you appreciate another writer.
Sure.
Or you respect another writer.
Exactly, and you don't want to do violence. You want the story to work.
Yeah.
You're just taking certain. It's amazing how you can take a certain thread through a book.
Do you feel the same way when your editors are editing your books? Because you've had 3 bestsellers, 5 novels and 3 bestsellers.
Right.
Does an editor help you become a best-selling novelist?
That's an interesting question because people always ask me if the front runner was, did the publisher, this was William Morrow, did they have any issues? Did they want to censor it? Did they want to take anything out? And actually, no, I had a really good experience with William Morrow. They were very accommodating. We did a real light edit, and they wanted it shortened a little bit, but they didn't want anything in particular
So they
taken
don't
out.
they don't change your style. They didn't do anything.
No,
like
they
that.
didn't do anything, and so I was able to take 10,000 words out of it without completely painlessly.
10,000 words.
10,000 words, but you know I could do it in a little bit here and a little bit there. They wanted it a little leaner, but there wasn't anything that they said, "Now we want this to be out because you know we're afraid it will offend people."
It came out in the 70s.
1974.
I read it in the 80s, and I mean, it was so touching and so moving, and you know, it brings tears to your eyes. And I'm sure there's hundreds of stories like that.
Oh, lots of stories. Well, starting with the author, I cried my eyes out when I read it. Certain chapters, certain sections, I was like, bah! Every time I did a rewrite. And people,
Especially the author.
I know, I know. Well, you have to. It has to start with feeling it yourself.
You are involved in humanitarian themes in your work, and you've gotten awards for what you've done, and now you're a pioneer at this Outright, WRITE, group. You're being honored as a pioneer. How pioneering do you feel?
Well, at the age of 76, you feel like you're pioneering just to have lived this long, you know. And
Not very long. You're doing well.
well, there's a few, you know, that are older than me. And Ann Bannon, for example, who's a friend of mine.
Who is in that group that we call pioneers?
Well, I think there's quite a few of us at this age. And now Ann has been around longer than I have, because I remember reading one of her novels was circulating in the dormitory.
Is that right? At
was
school?
a senior in college, and she was already writing Odd Girl Out and some of her other novels that are really, really known today. And so, yeah, there's a number of us that are in that age group.
And they're doing an event for you?
Yes.
Uh, Tell us a little bit
well,
about it.
It's going to be on the 27th of April, right here in West Hollywood, and it sounds like it's going to be a very, very nice event. And they're going to be reading things from our work.
I was going to say, will you be reading? Do you read from your own
someone
work?
Someone else is going to be reading, and there's going to be entertainment. It sounds like it's going to be very, very nice.
You lecture at colleges, or you have? Do you continue to lecture?
Yes, I continue to do it now and then.
And you've had seminars and helped with writing and all of that. What do you teach? What do you bring out when you're doing a lecture at a college?
I think especially for young people who are just starting out, I think the really important thing that I learned as a writer, because you go through the stage when you admire other writers and you can be influenced by them, and there's always somebody lurking around who will tell you that there are rules and that you should write a certain way, and there's the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And I had to battle my way through this. It was a very painful time. And
that you were told to write a certain way.
That's right. That's right.
And were you in college then?
Yeah, I was in college. I was in 2 years at Stevens College in Missouri.
Oh yeah, girls' college.
Girls' college. And that was a junior college, so then I went on to Manhattanville College of the Sacred Heart in New York.
Oh, fantastic.
And
Sister Colette taught there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, so you know Sister.
I know, yes.
Very good. So, for me, it was important to really find my own voice and my own style. And I learned that by writing. And that little by little, I really connected with my own muse. And so I encourage people to not let themselves be bent by the rules and to write by other people's rules. Everybody has to find their own way in this business. And if you do that, then you're going to just naturally write something that is very different from everybody else.
And you've written novels, but this book, My West,
yes,
which is not a novel.
No.
Tell us a little bit about that, because you're on the board at the what's the name of
the Grand Cours Ranch.
Grand Cours Ranch.
Which is the ranch that I grew up at.
Right.
And which is now a National Historic Site, and I'm on the board of the foundation. So we're a friend of the park, and we help to do fundraising.
Does it have anything to do with this, My
well,
West?
A little bit, because this is about, I've not only written books, but I've done a lot of magazine and short writing over the years. And I have written a lot about the West. I'm a native Westerner. I grew up on a ranch in Montana, and that's where my roots are. And there was the moment here a couple of years ago when I looked at all this short stuff I had written, and I realized there was an anthology in it, and that I needed to put together my favorite pieces on different subjects. And so there's sort of a collection of subjects in here.
Oh, it's a collection.
It's a collection from A to Z, and everything from animals to cooking to sexual orientation to women to different categories.
Good, I can't wait to read it.
And I had a lot of fun putting it together, and it did really well. I mean, considering that people don't really know me as a nonfiction writer yet.
So now we will. But now we know you as everything, bringing tears to our eyes and talking about the West from one end to the other. Thanks.
The West is a big place.
Patricia, thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Joan.
And don't go away, because we'll be right back with ceramist Gareth Mason. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with ceramic artist Gareth Mason, who was born and raised in Wales. He's traveled the world exhibiting his work and lecturing and doing symposiums and panels. So you've probably seen him in Turkey, Israel, Japan, Korea, Kenya, but he's here in Los Angeles at AMOCA, which is the American Museum of Ceramic Art in Pomona. And what were you doing there, Gareth?
I'm involved in an exhibition which is called Friendship Forged in Fire, American Ceramics in English ceramics in America.
Oh, English ceramics in
So
America,
the
that's
idea
right.
the idea is that they've sourced, it's an astonishing exhibition, they've sourced UK, wonderful examples of UK ceramics from collections all across Southern California.
Oh, they came from here, right,
Absolutely.
that's
So
right.
it's private collections mainly.
Right.
And also the American Museum of Ceramic Art's own collection as well. They've sourced them, brought them together into what it's turned out to be an extraordinary survey, a very extensive survey of ceramics in the UK over really the last 100 years.
It's all about the artists from the United Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
but it's sourced, as you say, from collectors here in California or through the
Absolutely.
United States.
Just mostly in Southern California.
And you found
I
that
believe,
many examples? People are collecting that?
Well, firstly, I wasn't involved in
But
curating the show.
Christy Johnson, I think.
Christy Johnson at the at AMOCA was heading that up, and of course David Armstrong, who is the director of the museum. And it's an extraordinarily resourceful effort on their part to source these what are very notable and very important examples of British ceramics, which have been collected over the years from numerous sources.
For what year span? How
So
many
we
years?
go from in the exhibition from the primary initial manufacturers of ceramics, like Royal Dalton and
like-
Wedgwood, the iconic
Yes,
British
yes.
manufacturers. So this is going back to the 1800s.
Right.
Right through to the emergence of the British studio pottery movement, through, of course, Bernard Leach, who founded the Anglo-Oriental links with the Japan folk craft movement. So he set up, essentially he was the grandfather of the British studio pottery movement. And then, of course, Hans Koper and Lucy Ree, who represent the modernist movement. And that moves right through to examples of ceramics across the gamut of contemporary studio practice. Mostly within the last few years, we're looking at really prominent makers from the UK. So
And
it's a
your
really good
work,
survey.
your work is from what year?
The work I've created in there runs just in the last 5 years or so, but much of it is from the last couple of years.
And how big are your pieces?
So these two sort of...
How big are they?
Yeah, they can be that
Like
big.
small to very large?
Yeah.
And I'm sure the gamut runs like that on many of those pieces.
Yeah, well, I think my thing's one of the biggest thing in the show.
Oh, it is,
One
oh.
of the things. It's
Is
at
that
the
why you
back.
didn't bring it?
No, it's not easily transportable. As you can imagine, the transportation of ceramics is something of a nightmare.
I was going to say, did somebody here own that piece? Or did you send
that
it
one's
over?
in the... I work with an agent who represents me, Jason Jacques, in New York. So I ship to him, and
I see.
then he ships, he disseminates
So
the work
that was
out.
there.
Yeah.
So what did you do? Why did you come, not only for the show, but I think you did a workshop.
I did, yeah. It seemed too good an opportunity to pass up, really. I regard a very important part of what I do, talking about not only my practice, but also the role of ceramic, the role of clay in creativity in general. I mean, it is a medium of expressive potential that's, in my view, as equal to any other, you name it.
But does clay differ from country to country?
Clay differs not only from country to country, but from region to region. I
Oh,
mean,
it does.
there are many different kinds of clay. But what's spectacular about it, in my view, is that it's so malleable. It's the ultimate abstract material.
Yes, does it then take on a particular style?
Depending upon the individual who's using it, for sure.
And,
I mean,
and
we
if
are.
they looked at Gareth Mason, what would they think? What would they see? Do you have a style?
My work has been described as a microcosm of a cosmic explosion.
That's, I wanted you to say that.
Which,
because the pieces have pieces on them, right?
Yeah, I work with I work with materials in quite an unconventional way. I'm interested in the emotive potential of material quality.
So what I understand is when you talk about that and you talk about the, working in a different way, you do throw a pot, though.
I do work on the wheel.
You do work on the wheel.
Pretty
Does
much
that
everything
mean-
I do begins on the wheel.
Uh-huh.
But then all kinds of things happen.
Yeah, that's what. Do those pots break apart?
Sometimes things fall off, and sometimes things fall over, and ceramics is a discipline that's riven with all sorts of disasters. But disaster can sometimes arrive and offer in its wake all sorts of opportunities. You need to be alive to that.
Do you have to be a chemist to make your glazes?
Alchemist, more like.
That sounds good, yeah. That fits with explosions.
Well, there is a kind of magic. Well, think about it. I mean, you're taking materials out of the ground and you're submitting them to fire. You're taking things to hell and back.
Right, right.
And in that process, a certain kind of magic takes place. And I rely on that magic. I celebrate that magic in what I do.
And do you try to create it? I mean, do you create it with a glaze, or do you use glazes that are already made, or how does a potter work?
You said try to create it, and that's quite an interesting word. To a certain extent, I can set up events that the kiln can then bring to bear on its own. So once you can imagine, once a thing goes in the kiln, you can't touch it anymore. You can't manipulate it. It's a magic place. It's a place of alchemy.
But and we're back to trying to set it up or to start it. Do you make a drawing?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't actually specifically design the things I make. I'm interested in drawing on the knowledge that I've accrued over about 25 years of working in clay now, and simply trusting that. There's a big backstory of influences.
But you know that. You know how to work with it. You know what's going to explode. But maybe. Did you start with a drawing, and then did you choose a color, and then did you choose a shape?
I've done a lot of drawing in my time, but mostly it's of objects out there in the world, be they organic objects or the human body. I was addicted to life drawing for a long time.
Oh, you were.
I draw objects in museums. I've taken into me influences from all sorts of sources. And they all get mixed up in my head in a kind of a primordial soup of influences, and they find their way out. So I don't actually sit down and draw the object that I'm going to make. It doesn't work that way. It's an altogether more subtle and alchemical process.
So I would never find a drawing that coincides with the piece that you've made.
No, but you'll find drawings of the archetypes that influence the things that I make.
And would they always be yours, or would they be other people's?
Not so much among contemporary makers, although I have drawn those. It'll be things primarily from ceramic history from the past, but also organic forms, tree stumps. Any inspiration can come from any place.
What does inspire you? What kind of artists from the past come into your mind?
Well, I mean, there's all of ceramic history. I mean, I'm teetering on the shoulders of giants. So the ceramic history is. Ceramics is one of the oldest art forms known to humanity.
And where did you go to school?
I studied at West Surrey College of Art and Design in the mid-80s in Farnham in England. So that was one of the primary art schools.
Was it a ceramic school, basically?
It had an iconic and important ceramics course. Yeah.
And why did you choose clay? If you were at an art school, you could have taken any kind. You were doing life drawing.
Yeah, sure. I think you need to understand the addictive quality and sensual quality of clay to really get that connection. I think if you have the sort of nature like mine, I'm a sensualist. I'm out and proud. I touch, I manipulate, I mold, I work in 3 dimensions. And you can imagine, even though as a kid I didn't know it, but as soon as I touched clay, I can't even click my fingers, try that again. There you go. Just like that.
Really?
It was like magic. It was, this is it. This is what I want to do.
But sensual, when you say that, and life drawing really do go together.
Oh, you can say that again.
They really do, but you don't make figures out of your pieces,
I don't.
do you?
I have done, but no,
have
I
you?
don't. I'm all about the vessel. I think the vessel is a much maligned medium for artistic expression. It's not given the credit or the credence that it deserves. And so part of my mission, if you like, is to bring the vessel into its rightful recognition as an art form as powerful as any other.
Oh, as an art form, the vessel.
Yeah,
and a vessel is something with a hole in the middle?
Potentially, yeah.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily?
It doesn't have to hold liquid either.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, my things are riven with cracks, and they if you try to put water in them, they'd leak, most of them.
But it's the idea that it's something that could hold something?
Yeah, well, the things I make will refer to all sorts of things, really, but that reference to that great, rich, extraordinary heritage of ceramics that runs back throughout history is a very important theme in my work. One of many. I mean, there are many influences.
And we keep talking about going back, and yet I don't know if it's just the United States. We look at ceramic art sometimes not as fine art, but as craft.
Yeah,
is there a difference?
There is a schism in opinion, I think,
yes.
Because there is a rich history and heritage of ceramics used in a purely utilitarian fashion. That then puts puts people who want to look at it in a different way at a slight disadvantage, because that tends to feed broad opinion of it, and that then makes it difficult for people to break out of that accepted norm of the way of viewing.
The reason I'm asking is there was a show at LA County Museum, and which went to the Met and to the National Gallery, of Ken Price's work.
Mm-hmm.
And Ken was always looked as a ceramist, as a fine artist, but he makes drawings of his work. He makes a different thing than what you're talking about. I don't think he looked for that explosion that you were talking about.
Sure.
But it's classified now as fine art.
There is now, I think actually, another thing I say about ceramics sometimes is that, you know, it may be the oldest art form known to humanity, but it's still a strange fledgling at the same time.
Mm.
And there are whole, quite discrete areas of ceramic practice that are breaking into new ground now, as
That's
there are
what's
in
so
the broader
great.
arts.
But
you know,
isn't that
yeah.
great?
Yeah, yeah, and what I've done is I've picked, well, perhaps contentiously or perhaps foolishly, picked the vessel to do as a canvas
as
with which
that-
to do that. You know.
Yeah. So, but that's really great. The vessel as a canvas,
Yeah.
because there we are, back to fine art
Yeah.
in that respect, and yet it's like a craft for you to make it.
Well, skill is vital.
Skill.
Skill is still absolutely crucial to everything that I do. And so unless there's skill in those rather beleaguered areas of arts practice that aren't all about the concept, where the human hand is still important,
Yeah.
then there is an important message to be told about physicality, about touch, and about the employment of skill to support ideas.
But that's what I think an artist is. It's the artist's touch. That's what makes it. It's the touch of what he does.
I'd be inclined to agree with you.
And thank you so much for bringing your knowledge to us today.
It's a great pleasure. speaking
Lovely
to
to
you.
have you, Gareth Mason, and thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles today. Keep writing, 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, and email at jaquinn1@aol.com. See you next time.